this year if nationals happened today, I'd probably win by more than 2 minutes. But let's not talk about movies.
Yes,
Yeah.
let's not talk
Yeah.
about it because Arvind Panwar might have a word or two
True, true.
about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, no. Yeah, no, it's been entertaining. And see, the way I look at it is, um, you've got to have somebody to push you, and the fear isn't the competition.
Yeah.
The person you're really battling at the end of that, we all are battling at the end of that day, is our inner voice,
Yeah,
that self-doubt.
yeah,
That is the biggest nemesis.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned. It's imposter syndrome. It's like, I don't deserve this, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not fit enough, or I don't deserve it. That's what I've learned from sport. It's the biggest competitor is that, and it's not the other guy who you're battling on the day. And as soon as you realize that, you start to operate.
হ্যালো আজকে 100 কিলো চালাতে হবে আমার রাত্রি 3 ঘন্টা সুইফটে চালাবো, টিটি বাইকে চালাবো। নতুন টিটি বাইক না, নতুন পজিশন টিটি বাইকের, এবং এটা হচ্ছে 22শে ডিসেম্বরের রেসের প্রিপারেশন। তো যেহেতু টিটি পজিশনে চালাবো এবং অনেক লম্বা ডিউরেশন, আজকে কারোর অনেকক্ষণ ধরে দেখবে এই আশা রাখি না। রেস না, এটা কোনো কিছুই না, বাট যদি টাইম থাকে, আমি এখন একটা পডকাস্ট শুনতেছি, যেটা হচ্ছে ইন্ডিয়ার বাইকি ভেঙ্কি বলে একজন আছে। ভেঙ্কি আমাদের ফ্রেন্ড। তো ভেঙ্কির সাথে যেই ভদ্রলোককে দেখতেছেন, ভেঙ্কি হচ্ছে ডান পাশে, নীল শার্ট। সাথের ভদ্রলোকের নাম হচ্ছে নাভিন জন হচ্ছে ইন্ডিয়ান সাইক্লিংয়ের একজন লেজেন্ড পুরাই। ও সিঙ্গেল হ্যান্ডেডলি ইন্ডিয়ান সাইক্লিংকে বদলায় দিচ্ছে। সো ও কীভাবে, কেন, কী করে, ওইগুলা শুনতে 100 কিলো পার হওয়া। তো যদি টাইম থাকে চাইলে শুনতে পারে। এরকম ইন্সপিরেশনাল লোক নাভিনের মতন সহজে খুঁজে পাওয়া যায় না। নতুন ইকুইপমেন্টের মধ্যে হচ্ছে গিয়ে আছে নতুন পানির বোতল, সাইকেল চালাতে যাতে পানি খাওয়া যায়। তো চলেন তাহলে শুনি নাভিন কি বলে। আর টাইম টু টাইম একটা দুইটা কমেন্ট করে কোশ্চেন করেন, আনসার করব, তাহলে 100 কিলো দেখতে দেখতে পার হয়ে যাবে। অডিও ঠিক মতন শোনা যাচ্ছে নাকি একটু কমেন্ট করে জানায়।
Different level, I feel. And maybe it's easy to say that when you're winning. I feel
Yeah.
because when I go to Belgium, all of a sudden I'm not big dog anymore.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
There's like 40 guys who are stronger than me, right? Or 30 guys who are stronger than me.
yeah,
And at that point, all of a sudden, the theory of you're your worst enemy goes out the window.
Yeah,
They're your
they
worst
are
enemy, right? So
Yeah.
maybe it's a little bit of a perspective thing and position and where you are. But you know what? Even with 30 guys stronger than you on the line in Belgium, I still do believe that biggest enemy is yourself.
Yeah.
Self-belief. I mean, because there are some days, when I ended up on the podium there in Belgium, I ended up on the podium once, and a 6th place last year in a pretty decent size amateur elite race. The Danny Young Memorial, and a bunch of guys who go on to Lotus Soudal next year. And what I learned was there were some days where you ride out of yourself.
right.
And it's the days where you least expect something out of yourself. It's the days I've had my best days on the bike is when I didn't expect them to be amazing days. When
Yeah.
that pressure of competition was not in my head. When I
Yeah.
was doing it purely out of I just went into this flow state.
Yeah.
Right? And I truly believe, that one of my big goals in the sport from a performance perspective, is to get on the podium at the Asian Championships, and I truly believe that the thing
Bike
that's
change করে নেই।
is my head.
Aero bike-এর সাথে
And
Aero,
so, along with
sorry, TT bike-এর সাথে TT bike চালা।
financial challenges that I have to overcome.
Offline-এও TT bike,
But
online
the
now.
core of it is like, do you believe that it's possible?
Yeah.
And I truly do believe it is. And so that from a performance standpoint, that's what keeps me going. One of those external goals that keeps me going.
Yeah. So it's another great point about you being your own enemy, right? The imposter syndrome is so relevant in every aspect of our lives. When you don't deserve this, and that internal dialogue keeps on going, and you end up beating yourself so much that you don't need any other enemies outside, right? So that is a great point. And one that I kind of noticed with your as an outsider with your journey is that you have this knack of helping your competition. As in, I've witnessed from quite close quarters that you were instrumental in Arvind continuing to perform. He is set with his railways job, and it's nothing taking away from his work ethic and all that, but you were, at least from what I kind of understood, you were the guy who set him and helped him find direction in terms of finding a coach, setting up his coaching thing, and you kind of help your own competition. I think by that you are indirectly helping yourself keeping on the edge.
There's two things to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so one is people either get it or they don't. It's a little bit of a mindset, which I probably learned somewhere at the end of college. It's this idea that there are two types of people in the world. Those who think that knowledge is power, right? And it is true. But then there's this other concept that you can only grow if you let go of old knowledge. And think about it this way. Okay, I asked you to cup your hands, and I don't know where this idea came from for me. It may have been from reading a book by Tony Hsieh, the guy the founder of Zappos, who passed away yesterday. But it may have been from this book. But this idea that you like hold your hands like this, and I asked you, I put eggs in your hand, right? How many can you hold? Maybe a dozen, maybe 2 dozen if you're really strategic.
Yeah.
But after that, what happens? Right? Eggs keep dropping out.
Yeah.
So there's no way to take on the only way to take on more eggs is to let go of the eggs that are in your hand.
Yeah.
Right? And you know what? When you hold on to knowledge in your head, as much as we like to think that humans have an infinite, they're only using like 5% of our brain.
Yeah.
Like that, right? I think there's a genuine limitation of how much knowledge we can hold on to. There's probably, we can remember, maybe 200 people's names.
Right.
I don't know there are some stats out there, I'm sure a cognitive psychologist will be able to tell you. But I truly believe that, there's only so much knowledge you can hold. And the only way to take on new knowledge is if you're willing to absolutely let go of your own knowledge. The other reason for that is, besides the physiological and cerebral limitations of our brain, it's also this.
Thanks, Raichul.
If you let go of your own knowledge and talk to someone about power meters, now they know about power meters. You hook them up with their coach. Now they are training at a very structured level with a phenomenal coach. You help them set up a coaching business. So now they're financially a little bit more stable, and you take them to Belgium. So now they're getting the same training skills. What that does is light the fire up your ass.
Yeah.
To say that if you decide to take a nap at any point, this guy is going to whoop your ass.
Yeah.
Right? And there's something about that. If you're really competitive, and if your goal is to not beat the other guy, but to improve yourself, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? I mean, and I
Absolutely.
genuinely believe my level is not going to go up unless the level of the competition kind of goes up. I have to be careful and engineer it in some way so that, you know, my ship's not like lower. But I don't do it in any, I make sure I don't do it in any negative way, you know.
Absolutely.
Never. I mean, that's just out of the question. Then it becomes boring,
Yeah.
right? So for me, that's the way. That's one way I look at it. You've
Yeah.
got to let go of old knowledge, really take on new knowledge, and to apply it. And as human beings, we need external motivation on certain days. You know, those days when you're just lazy, you don't want to get out of bed. The thought of your competition getting out of bed,
Yeah.
even if it's purely hypothetical,
Yeah.
that thought experiment is enough to, you know, get us into action.
Yeah.
It's just the competitive nature of human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing perspective, that really helps you as well as everyone around you.
The reason why I kind of have that mindset, which reminded me, is this, right? What I started to learn is that, okay, I've been in Indian sports since 2012, so
Yeah.
that's almost 8 years.
Yeah.
I've been in cycling since 2008, so that's almost
12.
12 years. What I realized is, and this extends, what I realized also extends for outside of cycling, in life in general. Your peer today, the people you are in the room with today me as an athlete, Arvind, maybe a couple other guys, tomorrow, we're still pretty much going to be in the same room,
Yeah.
maximum in the adjacent room,
Yeah.
and somebody is going to be your boss, you're going to be somebody's boss, you're going to have to partner with someone in a different capacity. Maybe Arvind is the head of the Railway Sports Promotion Board cycling, coaching department. And ultimately, in life, I have this rule, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say it at all.
Oh.
And the golden rule, which is don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
Treat others as you'd like to be treated yourself.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of try to keep that mentality, which is, just because you two are competitive today and you're trying to back each other, go faster than the other guy, most probably, an athlete I coach today is going to be the CEO of some company tomorrow. And for me, you're always in a better position if every relationship you have is positive, if not neutral.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. That's a great perspective as well. When you think about it, when you are giving as much or more than you are taking
Yeah.
from the system, you are putting something out there to grow, right?
Exactly.
And what I see is that the things that the knowledge you shared with others in terms of be it power meters or structured training, ways to train and all that. How many power meters did you see in 2012, 13, 14?
I was the only guy on the line with a power meter. Everyone was like, why is this guy racing with a 32 spoke wheel?
Yeah.
This is like the national championship,
Yeah.
Everyone had their fast forward and stuff like
And now,
that. It's everyone who knows how to use one and doesn't know how to use one.
yeah, so that's the kind of shift that has happened.
5 years.
And 5 years, and the kind of people, there is no what another thing that I noticed is
লাগাতার পাঠানে রাকিব
training that
ঘরের ভিতরে
number
অনেক
of
গরম
people that take training seriously and not just pick up a bike couple of weeks before nationals,
Yeah.
right? That has changed phenomenally. People who even have stable jobs with the railways or something still take training seriously now and look to train throughout the season than they were before, because they know that they can't just turn up now and do well.
And the other thing is, what is it to be normal, right? A lot of people, I mean, as social creatures, we look to the people around us to define what normal is.
Yeah.
And in India, we're the first generation where cycling is really kind of taking hold. And yeah, 10 years ago you were riding a bike outside. You're a nut job.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, you ride a cycle, but still, the majority of India, it's like, why are you riding a cycle? You
Yeah.
know, so that's changing, though, and
Yeah.
that's inevitable. And
Yeah. Yeah, I think that way your contribution to Indian cycling uh, has been phenomenal, at least in my view. That it it is not just the number of titles you won, more than that, the impact you had
Thank you, Hilal Hussain.
into the ecosystem, adding it. I think that is something that is beyond the anything you have, any medals you have achieved. I think that is your biggest achievement, at least in my opinion. And kudos to you on that. Now let's switch gears a little bit, and I've asked previous guests of the podcast what do they, if they have any questions for you, and a couple of them, because it was a last minute thing, only a couple of them were able to get back to me, and they asked a couple of questions which are more or less similar, and something that a lot of us wonder when it comes to you. Okay. Arvind Batedia has this question for you. What is the biggest change you made as a cyclist that garnered the biggest improvement for you?
Okay, so I would say the biggest change that I made to my training, of course, is the mental aspect of sport, but my physical side of the sport, it was core work and the founder. I mean, to be honest, like, yeah, I mean, that simple thing of just focusing on your core, to this very day, it just keeps giving back. It constantly gives, no matter what level you reach.
Right.
Something as simple as plank, something as simple as a the foundation routine, right? Game changer.
Yeah, I will link that video in the show notes for anyone who is interested. I think that is a very good.
While it's important for elite performance, it's even more important for the beginner.
Yeah.
I just can't emphasize the importance of it.
Awesome. I think that's a great tip there. And Dipankar Paul has a question that is no, I think he is asking for a lot of not just for himself. If it was for himself, he would have asked that. What is your FTP? But knowing him, stalking you and others on Strava, yeah, he might know. So his question was how do you keep yourself, how to keep self-motivated through the journey, and year on year, year after year, as the gains begin to flatten after hitting a peak, and it's tough to see big improvements through any kind of training, right? So when you hit a certain level, how do you keep progressing, and how do you, when you don't see the same level of progression, how do you keep motivating?
I mean, so to answer the first question about kind of how to keep self-motivated, I think one of the approaches that I use is, a lot of people, and this I see in the athletes that I work with, you see in elite athletes, what happens after Peter Sagan wins the World Championship?
Yeah.
Is the flame gone?
Yeah.
Or what happens, and the same question is faced by me, what happens after I win a national championship? So what happens if one of my athletes wins a national championship, then what? Or even if you're a beginner, right, your goal is to start your first race, what happens after that? So the way I deal with it is simple. I make sure that I don't define the end goal or the terminus of my journey as like winning something. I always kind of keep a pie in the sky kind of goal. Something beyond, something that's almost never perhaps attainable, or only attainable if everything goes perfectly. Um, and for me, like I'll just share it with its podium at the Asian Championships.
Yeah.
I mean, until that's achieved, I'm in this sport. I have a reason, at least from an external motivation standpoint. National championships, I may win, may not win, I may win another 5, maybe 2 more, who knows. So I really define goals that are not just within your reach, but at the same time they have to be realistic, right? There's no point in saying I'm not setting a goal of I want to get to the Olympics.
Right.
It might be easy to get sponsors that way, but it doesn't motivate me on any level,
Right. Yeah.
Because I know the steps to get.
Yeah.
Realistic but lofty goals, and also being very genuine about what happens is a lot of people have plans to a certain goal and have sacrificed their timeline of sacrifices planned all the way to their goal, but they don't have the timeline of sacrifices for the day after,
Yeah.
something to extend. So in my goal setting or my planning, I also plan for what am I going to do once I get off that incredible high of possibly achieving my goal
Yeah.
or not achieving it.
Yeah.
What am I going to do the next day?
Right.
That's super important. Whenever I have a training plan for my athletes, I always don't set the agenda till the goal. In my mind, at least, I also keep an agenda for what are we going to do afterwards.
Yeah.
So even if I don't burden the athlete with that mental computational kind of energy requirement, I make sure that there's something there.
Yeah.
And that's as far as motivation goes. As far as what you do when progression starts to slow or you start to hit some sort of physical peak, right? I mean, my FTP hasn't changed a lot since I've moved to India, right? But the thing is, another thing with my coaching style and what I've learned and what I've seen from working with the best is that the best coaches or the best athletes never actually talk about their FTP, because you realize it's just like the small talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you really know what you're talking about, you realize there's so many more dimensions to performance than just CP20, right?
Right. Yeah.
And there's so many aspects to improve in your bike riding besides just CP20 or FTP or whatever, right? So for me, it's just kind of having this growth mindset that's just not focused on one metric.
Yeah.
For me, strength training. How can I improve my knowledge about lifting weights? More specifically, just cycling.
একদম তোর মতন রে রাকিব,
Increase my gain.
সারা বছর একা ট্রেনিং করিস।
Right? How can I learn more about rehab and injury prevention so that I can ride longer and later into my life, right?
Yeah.
How can I learn more about nutrition and mental strategies to coping with failure and successes?
Right.
So there's so many aspects, and it's
জোস একটা পাবলিক, জোস একটা মানুষ।
So there's so many dimensions besides that. I think it's
Yeah.
just one aspect.
Yeah. So when you talked about goals and defining something beyond the goals, right? So we talked a little bit about identity-based goals
Yeah.
and having your identity nailed in
Yeah.
and working in alignment with that identity
Yeah.
will keep you going for a long time, rather than if you are focused on a particular goal and you achieved it. Now what? That question will not come in, and that the dip of motivation or post achievement depression or whatever
Yeah.
won't arise if your journey is tied to your identity that is beyond these goals.
Absolutely, yeah.
And these goals are kind of
Checkpoints, yeah.
posts on that path.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that is a great point you said. And also talking about CP20, so many of us, I am guilty of that myself when we started the power training, right? And focusing so much on those numbers will take the joy out of you, the riding eventually.
Yeah.
But when you are like day after day, you are just focused on those numbers and you forget why why you started in the first place.
Yeah.
But then you discover as you go along that there are so many other aspects to riding a bike and winning races other than that CP20. So now you mentioned about weight training and getting
time
better
trial.
at all
Oh,
aspects of it.
না এটা just
Riding a bike,
training.
you get better at
ওই যে
riding a bike.
22 তারিখের
Now-
রেসের জন্য প্র্যাকটিস
Are we
টিটি বাইকে
healthy overall? Is our body fit overall? So that becomes a huge thing as we age. You have quite a bit of thing to catch up, but
Oh no, trust me. I mean, the moment you kind of disrespect or kind of take the body for granted, it
Yeah.
has a way of saying, you know what, not so quick, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've had my share of injuries along the way, bad crashes, broken bones, um, and in those moments you're kind of forced to either kind of just Google investigate stuff or really reach out to professionals,
Yeah.
So my physio, Yash, is, one of those guys who really kind of changed my, just changed literally my longevity in the sport.
Yeah.
Because of that interaction that I had with a professional who knows about injury prevention and, rehab once you have it.
Yeah.
So that's super important.
So the prehab, making sure that your body is able to take the
Resilient.
is resilient, and then rehab.
Yeah.
So if you are good with prehab, as in weight training and all that stuff, you won't need rehab.
Yeah,
But ideally. But once you get into that situation, reaching out to the correct people and taking that long-term perspective of yourself, where you want to be. Say when you are 60 or beyond,
ঠিক আছে, আরহাম।
do you want to just
একটা ইয়ে বানায় নাও আপাতত।
arms that fall off
একটা ডেরা হ্যাঙ্গার পারলে বানায়
and
নাও।
you're not able to lift a chair from to move it from place to place, or you want to be strong overall, right? So that is a great thing about weight training, the importance of weight training that you talked about. So yes, I think those things for that thing addresses that. Now coming to a bit of broader subject of Indian cycling, right? Big topic. You have seen the not a decade but last 8 years of progression, close to it, last 8 years of Indian cycling progression, and talk a little bit about that from where
Yes,
it was
yes,
to
brilliant.
where it is now.
দেখা হবে তাহলে
And
নেক্সট
then
ফ্রাইডেতে
let us also touch upon
Oh,
where
না,
do you
next
see it
Friday তো
going
আমরা
in the next, say,
কুমিল্লা
10
যাচ্ছি।
Yeah, so I mean, things have changed very quickly. In
কুমিল্লা
the
চল
last
আরহাম।
10 years. Essentially, the competitive side of our sport was limited in terms of aspiration, right? The aspirational peak, the summit, was covered in clouds, right? And the peak was assumed to be win my first national championship, so that you can secure a job with the government and kick the bucket down the road for a year or two, win a state award recognizing your achievements, retire, start a bike shop, or go back to working in the farms, or ticket collect, or whatever the vocations are that are available to the cyclist level. And then that's the athlete level. And the federation level, you're like, okay, organize the national championships every year.
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, অসুবিধা নেই, অ্যাডমিশন টেস্ট আগে দিয়ে নেন।
Let's go and let's
Admission শেষ
go
করে
and
নে, তারপরে দেখা যাবে।
participate in the Asian Championships.
দরকার নেই এখন, অ্যাডমিশন প্রায়োরিটি।
And that was it, and that's been the way it has been for the decade before.
Right.
And what started to happen is a little bit of that the rising tide lifting all ships, right?
Yeah.
So people started to come in, guys like me, the team set up, privateers trying to make a dent in it, traveling abroad and doing races abroad, even if it was at the amateur elite level in
Yeah.
Asia. And then the federation seeing that this was happening and realizing that there is potential here, and also there's some incredibly hardworking people there in the federation who have, who kind of initially there was a little bit of a threat perception,
Yeah.
both on the private side and the federation side. But I think what everyone started to realize was everyone's just trying to move the sport forward,
Yeah.
right? And in 2015, when we first went to Belgium as a private group of individuals, India has sent a team to Australia before to prepare for the Commonwealth Games. We've got brilliant coaches over here, Graham Sears, to coach the Indian team leading to the Commonwealth Games. We've done that, but not
That
much
is
success.
track.
Track
Yeah,
and also
yeah.
road, actually.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
Swift riding.
To not much success, but then
খুবই tough.
they saw kind of privateers.
Real world race আর Swift
And
race
that idea of
পুরো দুইটা
when there's somebody
আলাদা
on your heels
sport,
trying to
essentially.
do what you are supposedly you know that's your mission, right? There is a little bit of impetus, right, that's added, and I think it started to change on the federation side when they realized, oh, you know what, there's interest here, the sport's growing, the club scene is growing,
Yeah.
right? And even an organization like a big federation says, okay, now our work's actually getting some eyeballs,
Yeah.
right? Our sport's getting some eyeballs, so their motivation went up. And the first time that the Indian national team sent their aspirations were elevated was when
লোকির মতন
chief coach there,
গ্লোরিয়াস পারপাসের মতন গ্লোরিয়াস সাফারি
and the talent identification team latched onto an idea, right, and said, let's try elevating our sprint team. And it was based on a little bit of a gut thing, saying that it's possible, right?
Yeah.
And that opened the floodgates of dominance on the track and the sprinting at the junior level in the women's side,
Yeah.
right? So Deborah Hell, probably the first kind of rider in Indian cycling who's kind of in recent history who's kind of achieved top level of Asian performance, right? And that started opening up the floodgates of what else is possible, going to the World Championships. And then within 5 short years, with kind of the talent that they identified, following that idea of the Belgian pathway that we took, saying, why don't we do that and send the national team to Germany, which is go, instead of trying to change the system here in some sense, that's what they said, instead of trying to import knowledge and try to apply it in the constraints of India, go to the best place in the world to do it.
Yeah.
If you want to see a picture of the Mona Lisa, you don't get some guy to paint it for you and get it in. You go to the Louvre, right?
Yeah.
And you see the Mona Lisa, and so it's that same idea, right? And that's opened the floodgates on the track side of things, where there's now global recognition of India's junior track sprinting prowess, right?
Yeah.
And so now the question is, okay, both sides have elevated their game. The community level of racing, the global sports at the grassroots level, thanks wholly to individual pockets around the country. And then you've got kind of this Olympic kind of funding, centrally funded kind of federation body that's kind of finding success in the track. Now the question is, are these two ever going to intersect in some way, right? It's going to have to be organic. Guys like us who are on the athlete side, the federation side, is there a place where we can interact, where we can intersect and kind of leverage the power of kind of what both sides bring, right? I think that'll take time, but that's what's going to happen in the next 10 years, because guys who are competing now are eventually going to be in these federation structures in the future. It's never somebody from left field.
Right.
Like I said, it's that small world concept. Right?
Right.
And so maybe now we don't see it, but it's the guys who are on the playing field today, who are kind of on the sidelines a little bit maybe today. It's inevitable that these things intersect, and I think the magic happens when those two worlds kind of collide in a good way.
Okay.
And that's where it's headed. Right now, I do my thing. I rely on the federation to get opportunities to represent the country.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of it requires building of trust over time and realizing that we're both working towards the same goals,
Right.
and that's happening very quickly. So
Okay.
I think that's where we are. That's where we were. That's where we are, and that's where we're going.
Yeah.
And so everyone just has to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay. So we have seen track riders bringing in the medals at various levels,
Yeah.
not just the Asian level, a little bit
World
in the World
Championships.
Championships.
We are
level.
world champions in the team sprint.
Yeah,
Juniors.
that is amazing.
Really cool.
So, do you foresee, say, in the next 10 years, the road side of things and MTB side of things progressing, seeing that sort of progress?
I mean, ultimately, it's because of the nature of the sport and things like that we're seeing this kind of growth trajectory. Track sprint cycling on the junior side is essentially it's the only discipline that has the most Olympic backing, right? And so for a federation whose lifeblood is essentially high performance funding
Yeah.
from the government, that's the angle at which they have to approach it.
Right.
Road cycling and MTB on the other hand, MTB is like literally relies on individual pioneers pushing.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite end of track.
Yeah.
you know.
Absolutely.
And road, it's like MTB, except it's much more competitive. The field is
Incredibly strong.
right?
Yeah.
So, in some sense, yeah, if you're an MTB rider trying to break in and perform at the world level, it's probably one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, you control your destiny to some extent.
Correct.
Right? With road cycling, even if you get the backing, are you the most talented person in the room?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you're going to be in the most competitive, deepest, field of cycling as a discipline.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's been around the longest.
Yes.
And so the challenge is different there,
Yes.
right? Breaking in. Junior track cycling is, in some sense, the low-lying fruit.
Yeah.
It is the safest part,
Yeah.
but at the same time, what we've achieved is just a phenomenon, thanks to, again, the talent and I know the people behind it, and I've gotten to interact with them, and it's by no luck that it's happened, it's through a lot of smart people actually making some pretty calculated and pretty wise decisions.
Yeah.
So the question is, can that momentum be used to kind of lift other aspects also, right?
Yeah.
That takes a little bit more of courage and a little bit more risk taking.
Yeah.
And it can't just happen just by the federation doing it. It's going to need that intersection of worlds.
Right. So that is from the organizational perspective of things. Now, when you look at riders themselves, the younger generation of riders coming through, do you see, because you are in touch with, you scope the landscape pretty much widely, and do you foresee riders coming and say surpassing the level that you and Arvind are kind of benchmarks right now? Do you foresee people that are reaching that and going beyond?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I pretty much know who the strongest riders in India are at pretty much every category and male and female and every age. I keep enough of an eye on things that I know that. I don't competitive landscape and the talents that are there in the riding. And that's just something that I have an eye for. You
Yeah.
know? And I've been fortunate to work with. I'm fortunate to work with some of the most talented right now, and have been fortunate to work with some of the most talented that I think have kind of whose lives have intersected with Indian cycling. And to think that there isn't more of that out there, and to think that there isn't more of that at an even more level of talent is like, it's like, you know, biology and basic statistics, it's like silly, right?
Yeah.
To think otherwise.
Yeah.
So the question is, now we are relying on pure luck for these talents to intersect with road cycling. And that's going to be the situation we face as the sport grows and becomes more popular, and you know, things like that. It's true with any sport, you know. Randomly, the most talented bicyclist in the world can walk in, his life intersects with Indian cycling. He ends up meeting me, we work together, and we can get to the next level. Or you know, if he walks into the Cycling Federation of India trials, and you know, he walks down the track path. But that's just like pure luck. There isn't a big enough of a net to identify that kind of talent.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
For a country with 1 million people. And so that's the reality of it. And so we have to realize, you know what, it's going to have to be a little bit of a waiting game, and a little bit of a game of waiting for lightning to strike. You know?
Right.
But in the meantime, there is enough talent here in India whose lives have intersected with cycling that can reach the level that Arvind and I have reached, or the rest of the sport is at, both on the track and in the road, and even surpass it. Right? So right now the challenge in India is, I tell myself, like, it's a standard I kind of maintain for myself, that I make sure that nobody in India at least is training harder than me. You know, and so right now I haven't met, there are some kids who I work with now who are more talented than me, but they haven't gotten to the place in their life where they're working hard, right? And it's, and results and progression lies when talent and hard work really come together.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Both of them match the level. And so yeah, I mean, Gagan, for example, the rider that I coach, that you coach, that you kind of help support and get into the sport, is one of those riders who's just like, as far as numbers go, there's no one in Indian cycling who has higher metrics than him in certain aspects, you know. But does that rider want to make this something that he wants to pursue? And it's not for everyone,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I mean, you can't force an athlete to do something.
Yeah.
It's got to come from within. Right?
Yes.
I mean, on the other end, a rider like Aman, who I worked with in the past, and he's probably the second most talented rider that I've seen in this sport. But yeah, I mean, stuff happens in life.
Yes.
You know, and kids grow, and they become adults, and they figure out what they want or what they don't want. And not everyone wants to be make cycling a professional sport. You know? So I mean, there's an incredible amount of just sheer luck and factors that have to come together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So the factors that you mentioned, right? It is just beyond just that power you can, the sheer talent that you have. It is beyond that. It comes through the realization. What are the other factors? From what is it that you want, that the rider wants, and easy gate for that kind of effort, that
Those
kind of sacrifices that.
the choices. Yeah, I mean, it's such a variety of factors. I
Yeah.
mean, it's easy to think that in an age where 22-year-olds are winning the Tour de France, that it happens randomly, but it requires a lot of nurturing and saying the right things from kind of, you know, the support system and things like that, and doing the right things at the right time, reaching out to the right people for advice and help, professional help, you know, help off the bike, all of those things. And so, yeah, it's in some sense, it's like less of a probability than probably a roulette. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So it is just beyond talent, and we are talking about a lot of different factors coming together. So it is not the dearth of talent. But the talent we are, because the nature of cycling scene growing, we are seeing lot more of these young talented guys coming up. Now it is a matter of, will the other factors also add to that talent,
Yeah.
and then uh, that would translate to us seeing results at higher and higher levels.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. So when when um, when it comes to talents coming to the fore, the community racing and the events play a big role, right? So how do you see the uh, growth of community racing over the years, and how do you see how do you see the importance of the role that the community racing plays?
Super important, right? I think the best way to explain this is anecdotally. I get a kid from, say, what's his third, fourth tier city in Rajasthan, I don't know, something smaller than Bikaner, and message me, right? 14-year-old. But I mean, so today morning I got four messages from four 14-year-old kids. One in Chandigarh, one in Guwahati, one in Delhi, and one in Mumbai, right? 14-year-old kids. One of them is 13 actually. He raced yesterday in Chandigarh. And these are kids who are asking me for coaching, right? I wish there was a way for me to say yes, let's do this.
Yeah.
You know. Now the kid in Jaipur or the kid in Bikaner doesn't have a racing, a community racing system there. He doesn't have a group of elders, a peer group of riders of a similar age who have an equal passion for the sport. Right? He's got nothing to say, hey, come out, let's ride tomorrow. Or this is what we need to do, this is how you set your saddle height, or someone to lend him his first pair of cycling shoes, right? Okay, the kid in Delhi might have a bunch of young riders to train with, but in Delhi with the pollution, you don't have the ecosystem or you don't have a racing culture. In Guwahati, this kid has a mountain bike, a road bike, and he doesn't have a peer group to train with, right? So how do you actually advance in a sport when none of those things that were essential to an average talent like me getting into the sport, I told you about my journey, to get into it, if none of that exists, right? You have an immense amount of passion in these 14-year-old kids, the willingness to learn and really commit at such a young age, right? 20 years earlier than than me. And so what do you tell those kids? The answer is wait it out, you know. I mean, short of moving to Bangalore and which not everyone can do, and it's not realistic for everyone to kind of build a life on that, being in a prayer. What do you tell those kids? You know, how do you let them down gently, right? I mean, there is no academy that takes them in. There are no high quality summer camps for these kids to attend. If they exist, they're probably going to be expensive, logistically challenging to get to. So the only answer, the honest answer, you know, is wait. And I replied to all of those kids saying, you know, generic answers like train 5 days a week, you know, ride your bike 5 days a week and make sure you're enjoying it. That's all I can say.
So that man, that's such a great example, live you shared about the importance of having an ecosystem of events, races, and a community that kind of supports you, a group of people to ride with. And everything is so important for all.
It's like going to Mars and trying to breathe. You can't do it. There's no atmosphere.
Yes.
So
the environment plays a big role, and that's why the platforms like BBCH here,
Club
um,
teams.
club teams.
Even if it's at whatever level of seriousness.
Yeah.
Like for a 14-year-old kid to have, like, like Spectrum, you have a, 40-year-old IT engineer with 2 kids, neurosurgeon who rides bikes, and Aussie guy who rides a mountain bike. Just having that group of people around them is super important.
Yeah, an 80-year-old special kid
Exactly. Yeah.
that can be part of the same
Yes,
group,
yes.
and these
Yeah.
old men.
Multi-generational, different walks of life. It's essentially a club.
Yeah, yeah.
And you not necessarily have to wear the same jerseys or have the same lifestyle or this and that, but you ride bikes and
Yeah.
that's what you're passionate about.
Yeah, and funny that you mentioned it, the concept of teams, right?
Yeah.
And people to ride together.
Yeah.
I always tell people when they ask about being part of Spectrum or something, I said if you end up with one team in the entire city, what fun is it?
Yeah.
You got to see, you have a group
Yeah.
of people, okay, form a team.
Yeah.
What is stopping you from forming a team and
Yeah, I
racing
mean, a
together?
team is different from a club. A team is kind of, at some point, you have some unifying identity,
Yeah.
whereas a club is more open to really, it's a little bit more of a more open kind of thing, and
Yeah.
more in and out,
Yeah.
you're free to walk in and out.
Yeah.
A team is some sort of bind, there's some sort of thing that you guys want to kind of do together.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, a club, a team, all of those
I,
important
I
parts.
think I think that I think this is high time for us to we have a bit of teams now,
Yeah.
be it Spectrum, be
Yeah.
it LBB, be it
Veloscope.
Veloscope, and
Tiered.
yeah, team too
Tired.
tired, too tired,
Yeah.
and team bros.
Bro, yeah.
So now there are teams. I think now it is also time to expand and
Yeah.
maybe look at the club culture
For sure.
as well.
Sure.
I think we need to.
Yeah, I think this kind of off topic, we're just talking about kind of Bangalore cycling specifically, but I think without politicizing stuff, I think in India we do tend to be, well, that's true anywhere actually, we tend to kind of politicize stuff and try to make everything a power play or a land grab or a money grab, right? And it's like looking for sponsors, and there's only so much support.
Yeah.
But I think there is room to kind of formalize club structures and do something more than just, it requires the right people
Yeah.
stepping up and doing it in a very neutral way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I know
Yeah.
there's room for a lot of growth. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Let's see. Let's
Yeah.
see what future has.
Yeah,
in it.
exactly. Yeah.
But I think coming back to the topic of events being so important, the events like BBCH, Tour of Nilgiris, Tour of Glory, Tour of Karnataka, these give one goal to look at and work towards and keep you centered. So that, and also they act as platforms for all these younger kids to showcase their talent. How do they come to the radar of CFI or award forms or something unless they have a platform, right? Absolutely. All right, so that's the role of community racing in the future of cycling, which is very critical as we just talked about. So coming back to you and specific the training, let us talk a little bit about training and nutrition.
Okay, so training. So my ideas of training have probably gone through about 4 kind of levels of enlightenment, I would say. Let's call it that. When I first started out, training was how to get a higher average speed, right? And how to push my physical limits, ride a little bit longer, ride a little bit faster, just finish a little one position higher, move up one category, right? And the way I went about doing that is just riding when I felt like it, riding with people who are stronger than me, bugging them to ride with them. And on one ride, for example, there's three anecdotes. One ride was when a rider stronger than me, I went on a ride, his name is Daniel Mendoza, but a graduate student in my college, and took me on this ride. He went up this hill really fast, he dropped me, and I was in the middle of nowhere. I knew not where I was. And it's like, don't be afraid to get dropped. You know.
Yeah.
A second ride, I'd gone out with another friend of mine, Greg Christian, now a nuclear scientist, guy with the biggest cars in the world, 420 watt FTP, could have been a professional, but didn't want it. You know? He was incredibly smart, and I went out on these 100, 200 kilometer rides with him, and I would just stay on his wheel. That was my goal. Stay on the wheel of a guy who's stronger than you, right? He probably waited for me a lot. Because, but it's just that idea of that it's okay to suffer once in a while, and just ride at a level that's outside of your comfort zone. With someone who's better than you. Again, you know. So the third anecdote was another roommate of mine, Chris Uberti, probably one of the best domestic sprinters in the US. And he taught me this concept of cadence. Pedaling a bike is about just going out and making sure that when you're on a bicycle, with running, the moment you stop moving your legs, you don't run anymore. You're not running. People have this idea that cycling is about being on a bicycle. You're only actually cycling if your legs are moving. So I see a lot of people riding bikes and on the highway, it's like, they're just like coasting, for half. They did a 3-hour ride today, they covered 100 kilometers, but they're only riding for about 50k. The rest of it is just coasting. So this idea that when you're out on a bike, spin your legs, right? Anyway, to sum it up, my first level of training was going by feel, training and learning from people who are stronger than me, getting outside of my comfort zone and what my perceived limits were, with people who knew what they were doing, right? I learned about cadence, I learned about distance, I learned about getting dropped on a hill and not being afraid. It's not the end of the world. So do all these things. Don't be afraid of hills. Don't be afraid of headwinds. Don't be afraid of distance. It's all doable. And when you do it with someone who's done it and does it at a really high level, you learn, right? And that carried me all the way through my collegiate racing and time when I was in the US. I started to ride and race with an eye towards performance and results and bettering myself in an objective way when I came back to India. Because all of a sudden I set this goal. I had to beat a bunch of other guys. I had to go a certain speed and then go faster than that fastest speed. So all of a sudden now my haphazard way of just riding and all of that wasn't going to work. I got my first power meter. That was where I got introduced to the world of power meters. Got my first coach. I was introduced to structured training. Right? That's the idea of structured training is it's easy to get faster. You ride a lot, you take a little bit of recovery, you're fast in the next week, right? Don't get injured, don't get sick, all of those things. But what working with a coach and working towards a goal taught me is now it's not enough to just be faster on some random day. You have to be the fastest you can be on a particular day, on your event day. You can't let your nerves get in the way, you can't let your body get in the way. You have to perform optimally on that day, right? That was kind of the second level of enlightenment, right? I mean, the third level of enlightenment was now I started racing outside India. I started to see what the level of racing was. I knew what it was, but now I was first-hand experiencing racing in Belgium, getting dropped in my first race, 100 meters into the race. And going to Australia, riding on a professional team for a year, being against some of the most talented riders in the world, seeing world-class talent sleeping in the bed next to me for the first time in my life. Right? 17-year-old kid with an FTP 150% more than mine. Right? What's different about him and me, right? It's easy to get clouded by the fact that talent is everything. Granted, Harry was born with an FTP of, 400 or whatever. Higher mitochondrial density, better response to high intensity training, all of those magical things that make you a talent. But at the end of the day, what I realized was, there's one other department that I'm lacking in. I'm not training as hard as him yet. I think I'm training really hard. Back then, my mileage was around 15,000 to 17,000, 20,000 kilometers. this guy and professionals are riding 20,000 as a minimum, right? 20,000 plus.
Yeah.
So I told myself, okay, I can get hung up on the fact that I'm not as talented and say, not for me. Or I can actually try and close a gap that actually exists. Work harder.
Yeah.
This idea of calm karo.
Yeah.
There's 100 excuses, but how many of those are in your control, right? And so the third level of enlightenment was I used to say this a lot, but then I actually applied it, tried lots.
Right.
And that's just doing anything more than you have done it before. You will get better at it as long as you don't get injured.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that was the third level of kind of enlightenment, and the numbers weren't going up, the power numbers weren't going up, but I was feeling like my body was changing. When you start to ride that much,
Yeah.
you change on a tissue level.
Yeah.
You change on a molecular level.
Right.
And so that now I look at as my superpower in Indian cycling. Nobody trains more than me. Maybe there are a couple of Breve guys who ride more, but nobody's riding as fast as me and at the level at which I'm training, with the quality with which I'm training. And so for me, it's like, okay, that's now what can I do, right? So the fourth level of enlightenment is where I would say I am now. I'm sure there are more levels to it, but right now I'm in a place where forget the numbers. It's about the final few years in my career in sport at a high performance level. I'm never going to be faster. I'm never going to be stronger. In these next couple of years, I'm going to I'm going to set these goals where I'm going to try and squeeze as much as I can out of myself. So, like I mentioned off camera, like the first time I'm working with a coach again since my first coach and my second coach, and it's because I want to try and see what more I can get out of myself. And really now it's just all in the head. And so I'm not as fussed about numbers. Like yesterday I did an indoor trainer workout. I was supposed to do 40 minutes of SST at 330 watts. And previously I would stress about it. I'd be like 340 watts or 330 watts on the trainer for 40 minutes straight. No way, I haven't touched the trainer in a month. You know how that feeling, right? Hopping on the trainer, you feel like an amateur. So what I did was I just decreased the resistance level to I think 300.
Yeah.
That's almost 10%.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But life is too short to stress about 30 watts in one 40-minute session with a trainer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I've done 22,000 kilometers in a year. This is not gonna, this doesn't define me.
Yeah.
Right? It's being able to adjust and be calm even when your body or your mind or whatever is not giving you what you expect of it on that particular moment, right? Realizing the big picture.
Yeah.
Right? You can go out and do something special tomorrow. So that's what I'd say.
Awesome. The levels of enlightenment in terms of training.
Yeah.
Quite a nice gives a nice perspective of what it takes for an athlete like you to keep going and keep seeing improvements, because you are improving in terms of the work you are putting in, and obviously that plays a big role in seeing the improvements that you are continuing to see. So when it comes to nutrition,
So nutrition is something that I've never, like I said, growing up, it was never part of my lifestyle. For me, nutrition was shawarma for dinner, Kit Kats for breakfast, Twix, Kit Kat, Bounty, every Middle East dessert you can imagine. And college kind of shook me a little bit because I saw what it means to have a balanced kind of lifestyle, exercise and nutrition, both in kind of some sort of equilibrium. The thing about cycling and endurance sport is you burn a lot of calories, and so calorific transgressions are typically cancelled out, right, in some sense. And so the real challenge becomes what happens when you're really pressed for time and you're not able to train as much. And at that point, the way I look at it, and I've not reached nutritional nirvana in any sense of the word, or uber enlightenment there. For me, I've come to a point where the way I look at nutrition is this: it's a dance. 2 steps forward, and as long as you're not taking 2 steps back or 3 steps back, that's good enough.
Okay.
For me, I look at nutrition as, okay, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's a waltz.
Yeah.
You know? And I am becoming more and more okay with that. And the other thing about nutrition is, I'm just starting this journey, which is like, I'm not looking at being like, super lean or super fit. I've never aspired to do that, especially being a big guy in the past. It's never been an aspiration for me to go to that kind of side of things. But the way I look at it is, I don't have to be super in shape all year. It can be seasonal. It's like when I'm coming my big goals, focus on, really hyper focus on nutrition and stress about it. But otherwise, just be kind of sensible about it. That said, I do try to follow this other rule of thumb, which is, if I don't cook it myself, don't eat it. That rule really works wonders. I think it gets you a long way towards being just healthier. If you can't enter in my fitness, so I just think in my head, I don't even go through the act of doing it, but if you can't enter how many calories or the food item you ate in MyFitnessPal, right? Don't eat it. Right? If you don't know what the shop biryani, the mutton biryani, if you can't enter it into MyFitnessPal, don't eat it. I mean, that's not to say don't eat mutton biryani all the time. At all. It's like, don't eat it every day.
If I were to follow the earlier rule of if you can't cook yourself, don't eat it, that doesn't apply to me, because I can cook every damn thing in the world.
That's also a kryptonite, I guess.
And I can make biryanis of different kinds.
Biryani,
brownies and bake all kind of baked
so
stuff.
The rule applies only if you don't cook well.
Yes. But great pointers. But when it comes to, say, for racing, so in-ride nutrition and
when it comes
race
to
day
that,
nutrition.
I'm dying. I don't think there's too much room to improve, even at the top levels that I perform at the Belgian Kermesses and the Asian Championships. That I've dialed. I have never cramped or bombed at the most important events in my life so far, as a competitive cyclist. Not yet. So that's been dialed, and usually the weeks, 2 to 3 weeks is the window I set for myself. I usually get off coffee, a weight comes down to my kind of optimal. I've never gone under 70 ever, because that takes more than 3 weeks to go from. I usually sit around 72 and a half to 73 during my low motivation periods or off periods or times where I take off pressure. I go up to 74, never cross 75. So I have kind of some limiters in my head to know where I am. And this is the first time in my life that I've come under 70, and I feel it's just from the calmness that I feel of not having to race. It's funny that when the goals are taken away, it's when I'm the calmest. Past something there, but so nutritionally, just the basics, and one of the books that I read that really nailed a lot of stuff home is 2 resources. One is, and I'm sure there are better books out there and stuff, but what did it for me was the Feed Zone Portals book by Alan Lynn, and Biju also was part of that project. There's a little forward in that book. It's about 30 pages, but the nutrition information that's been laid out there and what the calorie equations are for active people, it's just so clearly laid out there and so succinctly laid out there without being very bombastic about or complicated about things. Those 30 pages, I wish it was a booklet. I'm sure there are resources out there, but this I found to be really armed me. And I would say that's the main thing.
So the what is the book again?
Feed Zone Portables.
The Feed Zone Portables.
Or the Feed Zone Cookbook. Both of the forwards have that Those
Okay.
30 pages of just nutritional nuggets.
Nice,
Phenomenal.
nice, nice.
Yeah.
When it comes to say raised day calorie intake, do you do like a hourly 300 calorie kind of thing?
So as far as India's nutrition, just kind of following those rules of thumb, right, which is 60 to 90 grams per hour. Those rules of thumb, they work.
Yeah,
You
they
know,
work.
and there's a reason for it, and you just have to spend a little bit of time figuring out what nutritional mix works for you to hit that 60 to 90.
Yeah.
For different people, it's different. For some people, they swear by idlis with peanut butter. For
Yeah.
some people, they swear. I haven't changed mine from yoga bars and fast enough energy. You know, and yeah, as long as you meet that, you're gonna be fine. And those people who think they're the outliers, good for them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Great. The training and nutrition tips there are quite useful for a lot of us. And now coming to the all important subject that I wanted to talk to you about, that I am more focused on nowadays, is weight training.
Okay.
Yeah. So, what do you see the role of weight training playing in terms of your cycling goal?
So, I got introduced to the benefits of weight training and just strength training actually in one of my phases of injury. You know,
Right.
I'm piriformis syndrome, tendinopathy on the right hamstring, at the hamstring origin, right?
Yeah.
It's under the support. And so Yash sorted out my kind of spasm muscle and things like that with physio work. But then the prehab work started, and the prehab work involved a lot of single leg strength work to bring that leg, which for 3 months had been basically out of the equation, right? While I was still kind of pushing through the training and Google investigation. And so that was my first introduction to the paradigm of single leg strength work. I'd always been doing a lot of core, but once I got healthy again, I realized, man, the single leg stuff works. You
Yeah.
know, doing 20 reps on the injured leg and 10 on the other. Eventually, yes, it gets strong. In fact, it comes back in some cases stronger. Right?
Yeah.
Then I started introducing kind of complete strength, you know, and full body compound movements like the squat and the deadlift.
Yeah.
You know, the biggest thing, like, whenever I work with my athletes, there are a few of them who are always hyper excited about introducing weight training to their routine,
Yeah.
right? Because you see the professionals doing it in the YouTube videos and, you know, all the fancy balance stuff that
Yeah.
the MTV guys do, and they're like, I want to do this because
Yeah.
it's going to make me a lot faster.
Yeah.
And I really watch my FTV. But the thing that I tell people is that weight training is only useful if you do it absolutely perfectly in
Yeah.
form.
Yeah.
Right? Because a slip disc or a compressed disc can lead to a lot of time off.
Yeah.
A tendon injury from, you know, bad form can lead to changing your life forever.
Yeah.
Right? So weight training is one of those things. Unlike riding a bike, weight training, if done right, massively beneficial. If done wrong, it's not just neutral or you don't improve. You're actually unhealthy.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes it can be debilitating. Right?
Yeah.
And so don't do it unless you do it armed with, there is no halfway weightlifting. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's not like riding a bike.
Yeah.
You know, you can ride your bike with high cadence or low cadence and you'll be fine for the
Yeah.
most part. But with weightlifting, if you're not doing it in perfect form, don't do it.
Yeah.
And just do calisthenic work, body weight, maybe single leg stuff with just body weight. That's very hard to injure yourself.
Yeah.
As far as what the benefits of weight training are, it just makes you a more resilient human being.
Yeah.
Forget athletic performance.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. There are two types of people in the world. One who will go through life realizing how amazing weight training is, and then there's the other who will never know what it's like. You
Yeah.
know? And it will be a less lived life, in my opinion. That's how beautiful it can
Yeah.
be to improving your overall sense of well-being. You know, it just makes you feel better. You know? Just like that cycling, the positivity you get from cycling, weight training adds a whole different dimension of that level of positivity.
Right.
And it comes from that tendon resilience and postural kind of improvements and just the way you walk.
The stability that it gives.
When you're on the bike,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, super important, but
So
with
do you-
caution.
Yeah, with caution. And do you have, say, 3-4 key kind of lifts or
Yeah.
exercises
I mean,
that benefit cycling?
If you know how to do, like I said, perfectly,
Yeah.
the squat and the deadlift, right?
Okay.
And even if you're doing with just a bar, right,
Mhm.
the perfect form has the potential to really change, improve mobility, increase that tendon resilience a little bit more so that when you're pushing big gears on an uphill or into a headwind, you're less likely to experience knee pain, things like that,
Yeah.
right? For the average person, I think single leg work is really beneficial.
Lunges and stuff?
Something as simple as lunges and single leg deadlifts, stiff
Okay.
leg, single leg deadlifts.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Those are two movements. It's basically splitting up the squat and the deadlift
Right.
into a single leg movement.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So just those two exercises with that's it. That's what I would, and the founder.
Yeah.
That's like, when I go to the gym tomorrow to start my weight training again, after almost a year off, it will be the squat, the deadlift, single leg split squats, single leg deadlifts, and foundation routine, and some core work to kind of, prepare a little bit.
Almost a year of training? Weight training?
Almost a year, actually, beginning of this year, I was in the gym a little bit in my preparations for the Asian Championships, which were cancelled. So it's been almost 9 months. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Super,
Really awesome.
super. Also, I think the corona and closing of
Exactly,
the gyms
which is why
kind of,
I haven't been able to go.
right.
Now feels like the right time to be able to
Yeah.
go in without restricting.
Awesome. Okay, so let us kind of dive into a little bit of maybe a bit of harder stuff. Like, what are some of the biggest hurdles you faced in your journey so far, and how did you overcome?
There's so many, but one of the toughest moments for me was recent. Right now it's deciding and building up the momentum, the confidence to push through to achieve the final goals that I have. So it's really just a mental thing, and it's about building momentum. The way I tackle kind of challenging goals is building momentum with small actions. So small things like, focus on stabilizing my coaching work so I have a financial basis. Reach out to sponsors so I have the equipment covered. And then sign up, work with a coach again for the first time in a very long time. So my physical progression is intact. Right, so right now is the biggest challenge I've ever faced.
Yeah.
As far as challenges that I've faced in the past that really kind of forced me to rethink stuff, coming second in the national championships in 2018, that forced me to ask the question, why am I doing this? And if I can't be the best in India, why am I making all these sacrifices? So it's a simple equation that I set up in my head so that if ever I doubt what I'm doing, I just have to revisit that equation. Unless I am the best, then if I'm not the best, then don't do it. Right? Because the level is not that high here. Right? So I should be able to maintain it and progress and build on it. So that 2018 loss was super important to reevaluate and to refocus and say, if you're doing something, do it at least with 100%.
Right.
Don't do it at 99 or 98. Another challenge was signing my first professional contract in 2015. And that also was another moment where it was like the lack of self-belief and things like that. But that, and also in combination with that, the financial challenges of the opportunity is there, but how do I create the bring about the support that I need to do it. So breaking back past this barrier of just setting the ego aside and asking for help from people.
Yeah.
So I think those are kind of the two big ones, recent, big three, I would say,
Okay.
in kind of reverse chronological order.
Okay. So, from your experience working with a lot of student athletes,
Yeah.
lot of working athletes even, you would have seen, them going through a lot of their own challenges. So, what are the kind of challenges that you see them facing, and how do they overcome it, or how do you maybe
Good
help?
question. I mean, at the end of the day, to boil it down, the biggest challenge that I see with every athlete that I coach is, and I like coaching because it gives me a different perspective. It requires me to be incredibly objective, and it requires me to help athletes. The way I see my job is, as a coach, is help my athletes get through the challenging times, because the non-challenging times are easy.
Yeah.
Anyone can do that,
Yeah.
right? That's where I try to bring value. And all the challenges that my athletes face, whether they're working athletes or students in college or at school, it's all the same. It's typically the biggest challenge is themselves.
Yeah.
It's self-doubt, it's lack of confidence, it's imposter syndrome, that's it. It's the mind. And so you realize as a coach, setting the training plan and driving progression in FTP is the easy bit. It's how are you going to change your athlete's mindset. I mean, let's think about it. I mean, you're psychologically altering someone's emotional state,
Yeah.
and figuring out how to do that for 2 dozen people.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you feel like a mother.
Yeah.
And but not every coach takes on that. Some say, my responsibility ends at the 4-week meso cycle,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And setting the power targets and the number of reps,
Yeah.
and things like that. And I think the good coaches, the ones that really get everything out of their athletes, are the ones who are willing to cross that line.
Yeah.
And I've had people tell me, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
For X amount a month.
Yeah.
That is not a responsibility that person is paying you enough to take on.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, moms do that for no money, but or a significant other or a friend does that for no money. But as a coach, that's a line that I've decided as Walk-On's coaching as a coach there to kind of allow that line to be crossed, because that's where I feel real breakthroughs are made. You
Yeah.
know? And and I can remember instances with every single one of my athletes where I've had to cross that line multiple times.
Yeah.
And that's what I like, the challenge of that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, coaching is pretty boring.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
just sign up for trailer.
Yeah. So that's a very good point, because then with my own coaching, I tend to take on that role with the younger guys, and was initially hesitant to kind of take on that role with older athletes, because I kind of had that hesitation. Would that be a line too much to cross, or should I hold myself to just providing the plans and forget about it. Then I kind of realized that by kind of holding back there, I am not living up to my own standards of what a coach needs to be.
Correct, yeah.
Because when I was working with Gagan or Sri or Mani, I kind of fathered them,
Yes.
right? When it's kind of coaching, I'm looking at every aspect of it. What are they thinking? And correcting them when their thought process is not in line with what is right. But when it came to the older athletes, so that is where now I kind of come to realize that okay, this is also a very important aspect even for them, right? So that is what kind of changed
Yeah.
myself in the recent months, and it's
I mean, if you talk about elite, I mean, we're all humans at the end of the day. Whether
Yeah.
you're an 18-year-old human or an 80-year-old human or somewhere in between, a 40-year-old
Yeah.
human, ultimately our biggest enemies are ourselves.
yeah,
And I mean, if you look at a guy who's starting to ride a bike, or a woman who's ridden bikes a lot, or even if you're the world champion going dance, you still have to fight the psychological demons,
Yeah.
right? And in elite sports performance, they call you a sports psychologist, and it's not the responsibility of the coach, so there's a line there. But the amateur level that we're working at, yeah, I mean, that's more of a coaching conversation, and every coach defines what their principles are, right? As a business or as a service, and there's no right and wrong. You just got to figure out what you want to bring to the table.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
Some it works for some people don't look for it, and
Yeah.
some people just aren't able to open up. But you set the tone as
Yeah.
a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, NJ. This has been a great conversation, talking about your own journey, your learnings, and sharing with everyone on the podcast. Thanks a lot for your time. Is there one question that you wish people ask you more?
No, actually, enough questions.
Thank you for your time.
Hey all, make sure you subscribe to the Working Athlete podcast if you haven't already on YouTube or Spotify or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Venky's churning out some awesome content. Make sure you don't miss any of it by subscribing now.
আজকের মতন এতটুকুই। খোদা হাফেজ।